I never expected the first text of the morning to shake me so hard. It wasn't from family or work or anyone I usually hear from. It came from a neighbor who rarely reached out at all. All it said was, "Did you list your cabin? Realtor's sign outside." My heart froze before I even finished reading the words. For a few seconds, I thought it had to be some misunderstanding. Maybe they meant another property, maybe another family entirely. But the message was too specific to dismiss as a random mistake. The address matched mine, and the photo proved it was my gate. There was a bold white sign screaming for sale. I felt a rush of anger mixed with disbelief twisting in my stomach. How could there be a sign in front of my cabin without my consent? I hadn't spoken to a realtor, hadn't even considered selling it. This wasn't just property. It was my retreat, my family's escape. The idea of strangers touring it felt like a violation of trust. The first thought that hit me was burglary, some cruel scam. Maybe someone was trying to pose as the owner and flip it. The real estate world had its share of shady stories like that. But then the neighbor's second text clarified the truth painfully. HOA invited a realtor today. Clients coming in an hour. That was the moment my blood boiled, hotter than ever before. The HOA, the organization I paid dues to, had crossed a line. I'd had my frustrations with them before. Small fines, nitpicks, but never something as outrageous as trying to sell my place. It was like waking up to find someone had stolen your identity. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee forgotten and cooling fast. Emails, texts, and phone calls flashed through my mind at once. Do I call the HOA president first, or confront the realtor directly? Do I call the sheriff to report trespassing before it even happens? Every option seemed surreal, like a nightmare in daylight. The cabin wasn't just a structure on some plot of land. It was the place where my father taught me to fish in the creek, where my kids roasted marshmallows their first summer away, where every season carried its own special family memory. It was woven into the story of who we were as people. And now a group of strangers thought they could stroll inside, not because of some misunderstanding at a listing agency, but because my HOA apparently believed they owned me, that they had the right to market my home without a word. The arrogance of it fueled every nerve in my body. I grabbed my phone and called the HOA office immediately. It rang, and then dropped into voicemail purgatory. No answer, no emergency line, not even an explanation. Just a robotic voice telling me to leave a message. I hung up before I shouted at a machine. Next, I called the property management company they used. A receptionist picked up, calm and polite, almost robotic. I explained the situation as clearly as I could manage. Her answer dripped with rehearsed indifference. "Must have been a mix-up with unit numbers," she said. "A mix-up? A unit number? My cabin was not a unit at all. It was a standalone property with a locked gate and fence. It wasn't even on the same street as the condos they managed, but she acted like I was making a fuss over paperwork. My patience was being tested like never before. "Cancel the showing," I said firmly into the phone. "There are buyers already scheduled to arrive," she replied. "You don't want to embarrass yourself by being uncooperative." That was the exact word she used, uncooperative, like I was a problem for protecting my own land. The rage boiling in me had nowhere else to go. I slammed the call shut and grabbed my car keys. I wasn't going to waste another second on phone games. If they wouldn't protect my property, then I would. This was war, and I wasn't going to lose. Driving toward the cabin, my hands clenched the wheel tight. Every mile closer, my pulse quickened like a war drum. I imagined the realtor smiling, pretending they belonged there. I pictured strangers peeking into rooms, judging my furniture. It felt like a crime in progress that I had to stop. The cabin sat about 40 minutes from my main house, through winding roads and tall pines that shielded the sky. Normally, it was a peaceful drive I loved taking on weekends. But this time, the scenery blurred past in bitter silence. I was a soldier racing toward a battlefield, not a retreat. I remembered the first day I got the keys to that cabin. The smell of cedar on the walls, the sound of creek water. I remember thinking, this is ours, safe and untouchable. That promise echoed in my mind as betrayal now. No HOA had the right to tear down that sanctuary. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat with another text. It was the same neighbor who warned me in the morning. "They are here. Realtor just pulled up with 2 clients. I pressed hard on the gas pedal without hesitation. If they thought they'd see inside, they were dead wrong. I started plotting my strategy in my head as I drove. Step 1, take down their sign and reclaim the front gate. Step 2, replace it with a message they couldn't ignore. Step 3, lock everything so tight they couldn't slip in. It would be my word versus theirs, but my word was law. The farther I drove, the sharper my determination became. I wasn't just stopping them for today's trespass attempt. I was setting the tone for every future stunt they might try. If I let them win once, they believed they could again. I had to make this sting enough to last forever. By the time I hit the gravel road near the cabin, my headlights illuminated the sign standing tall. Even in the fading daylight, it glared back at me smugly. For sale in big block letters, like a declaration of theft. I slowed down, staring at the insult rooted in my soil. I pulled up to the gate, stepped out, and felt the air change. The woods were quiet, save for the crunch of my boots. Every sense sharpened with a mix of anger and adrenaline. I was no longer just an owner but a guardian of sacred ground. This was mine, and no one else's claim mattered. I yanked the stake of the realtor's sign out of the earth. The wooden post groaned as it ripped free from the date. For a moment, I held it like a spear, trembling with fury. Then I laid it across the gravel like a body on the ground. The advertisement was dead before the showing even began. From the corner of my eye, headlights glowed down the road. A silver SUV crept slowly, carrying the uninvited guests. The realtor, all smiles, led her client straight toward me. They hadn't noticed a missing sign or the man at the gate, but they were about to. I planted myself at the entrance, arms folded like iron. The padlock in my hand gleamed under the fading light. They slowed, confusion flashing across the windshield. The realtor rolled her window down, voice pitch bright. "Hi, we're here for the showing," she chirped, unaware. I let the silence hang for a beat, cold and deliberate. Then I lifted the sign from the gravel and held it high. "This showing is canceled," I said, voice steady as steel. Her smile faltered into a nervous twitch of confusion. "I'm the owner, and this property is not for sale." The clients exchanged awkward glances in the back seat. One whispered something, and the other laughed nervously. The realtor stammered about miscommunication and listings. But I saw her eyes flick nervously toward her phone. She was already preparing her excuse for the HOA. I locked the gate with one decisive motion, metal clanging. The sound echoed in the woods like a final gavel strike. Then I planted my homemade sign where theirs had stood. Bold letters spelled the truth in black spray paint. "Not for sale. Trespassers will be prosecuted." The realtor flushed red, muttering apologies under her breath. But she knew she'd been caught in something bigger than her. The clients shook their heads, embarrassed to be involved. Within minutes, the SUV turned and crawled back down the road. The false sale of my cabin ended at that locked gate. I stood in the dust, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. The forest around me was silent, heavy with judgment. For a long moment, I wondered if I'd gone too far. But then I thought of my father, of family nights by the fire. I knew I had done exactly what needed to be done. Back inside the cabin, I sat at the old wooden table. The sign outside gave me comfort, a soldier guarding. I replayed the confrontation again and again in my mind. Every second proved how close they had come to stealing. It wasn't paranoia. It was defense of what was mine. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email alert. The subject line, violation notice, non-cooperation with HOA. The audacity made me laugh out loud in the empty room. They were fining me for refusing to let strangers inside. The insanity of bureaucracy had reached its peak. I scrolled through the letter, fury sharpening my focus. It accused me of unneighborly behavior and disruption. They even had the goal to threaten escalating legal action. But their mistake was written in every smug line of text. They admitted, in writing, that they had scheduled the tour. That email was more valuable than gold to me. It wasn't just proof of trespass, but proof of intent. They couldn't twist it later into a misunderstanding. They couldn't erase their arrogance now that it was typed. The HOA had handed me their confession on a platter. I printed the email, 2 copies, and slid one into a folder. Documentation was my shield now, and I would need plenty. Every photo, every text, every blurred screenshot mattered. I wasn't fighting neighbors anymore. I was fighting an empire. And empires fall hardest when they underestimate the small. Outside, the padlock gleamed under the moonlight. The sign swayed gently in the evening breeze. No one dared return that night. No realtor, no clients. The forest was mine again, silent and unbroken. But I knew the war wasn't finished. It had only begun. As I lay down in the cabin that night, sleep resisted me. The day's chaos played on repeat inside my head. I felt anger, relief, pride, and a lingering edge of fear. But above all, I felt a renewed bond with this place. My cabin wasn't just wood and nails. It was sacred ground. Tomorrow would bring calls, threats, and ugly battles. The HOA wouldn't back down quietly, not after this stunt. They would throw everything at me, fines and letters alike. But tonight, I had won the only battle that mattered. The cabin was mine, and the gate was locked. The morning after the showdown felt strangely quiet at first. Sunlight broke through the pines, scattering gold across the deck. Birdsong returned, calm and indifferent to human squabbles. But I knew the silence was temporary, the eye of the storm. The HOA would not let last night pass without retaliation. I brewed coffee in the cabin's dented old percolator. Steam rose, comforting, but my nerves were raw. Every buzz of my phone made me flinch, expecting war. I didn't have to wait long before the first volley came. An email, bold letters, immediate action required. They accused me of obstructing community business. They threatened fines, daily penalties, even legal referrals. The gall in their tone was as sharp as broken glass. I read it twice, jaw tight, fingers gripping my mug. They thought fear would bend me into obedience. Instead, the letter hardened me like steel under flame. I pulled out my folder and added the email to the pile. Each document was a brick in the wall I was building, a wall strong enough to stop their arrogance cold. I wasn't scared. I was preparing for battle. By noon, I drove back to my main house. I needed Wi-Fi, a printer, and a clear desk. The HOA wanted to play games, but I'd escalate. I started calling attorneys, one after another. Most brushed me off, but one agreed to listen. Her name was Martinez, sharp-voiced, confident. I explained every detail, from the fake sign to the lock. She paused, then asked me to forward the documents. Her tone shifted from curiosity to quiet calculation. "This isn't just wrong," she said. "It's actionable." That word, actionable, rang like a church bell. It meant I wasn't crazy, wasn't tilting at shadows. It meant the law might actually be on my side. HOAs relied on intimidation, not legal foundation. And finally, someone was ready to challenge them. We set up a formal consultation for Friday afternoon. Until then, she advised me, document everything. Emails, texts, phone calls, even neighbor chatter. Every scrap of evidence was a weapon in waiting. I promised her I'd keep the folder thick and growing. That night, the first letter arrived in my mailbox. Plain envelope, but inside, notice of fine. $500 for refusal to comply with showings. My laugh echoed down the quiet street in disbelief. They had fined me for locking my own gate. The absurdity only made me more determined. I scanned the letter, printed a copy, filed it away. I wrote a brief note at the bottom in bold pen. Exhibit A, evidence of harassment and overreach. Already, the folder was turning into a weapon. Neighbors began calling, curious about the rumors. Some sided with me instantly, disgusted at the HOA. Others muttered about community rules and cooperation. I realized the board had been whispering behind my back. They wanted to paint me as a rogue troublemaker. But every rumor only fueled my resolve further. I met one sympathetic neighbor for coffee in town. She admitted she saw the realtor's car that day too. Her statement was small, but it was confirmation. More proof that I wasn't imagining their intrusion. By midweek, the HOA escalated again with a letter. This time, it threatened suspension of my privileges. Pool access, trash service, and even parking rights. They believed these were levers to make me cave. Instead, it proved how desperate they were becoming. I snapped photos of the letter, filed it, labeled it. The folder thickened, its spine beginning to bulge. Each page was a reminder that I wasn't powerless. Each document was a spark for the fire building inside. They wanted war. They had chosen the wrong opponent. Friday came, and I met Attorney Martinez downtown. Her office was lined with casebooks and quiet strength. I handed her the folder, thick with my week's battles. She skimmed, eyes narrowing, lips curling into a smirk. "This," she said, "is not going to end well for them." She explained the basics of property law patiently. An HOA cannot trespass or assume ownership rights. Their powers stop at common spaces, not private land. By scheduling that showing, they cross the boundary. By finding me afterward, they only deepened the wound. The plan she laid out was sharp and simple. Step 1, send a cease and desist to the board. Step 2, prepare for arbitration or civil court. Step 3, notify the State Oversight Committee. Each step was a nail in the coffin of their arrogance. I left her office lighter, like chains had fallen off. For the first time in days, I felt truly in control. The HOA might send letters, but I had weapons too. The law wasn't just as to twist, it could protect me. My fight was no longer defensive, it was offensive. That weekend, I returned to the cabin again. The sign still stood proud, bold black spray paint. "Not for sale," glared like a warning in the dusk. The padlock clicked as I checked it twice. This fortress was mine, and I would defend it. In the quiet of the woods, I found clarity. This wasn't just about a cabin or a gate anymore. It was about dignity, ownership, and respect. The HOA had treated me like a tenant, not an owner, and I refused to let them rewrite that truth. I sat by the fireplace, logs crackling, shadows dancing. The sound reminded me of family, of simpler years. My father's word echoed, "Guard what's yours fiercely." That lesson had never felt so real, so urgent. The fire inside me matched the flames on the hearth. Monday morning, my cease and desist was mailed. Martinez drafted it with precision, no wasted words. It demanded an immediate halt to all harassment. It warned of legal action if they dared continue. I could almost hear the boards panic as they read. But I knew they wouldn't fold quietly, not this board. They were too used to control, too arrogant to retreat. Power had made them bold, blind, and reckless. Their next move would come, I had no doubt at all. And when it did, I would be ready with fire. The war for my cabin had only just begun. Chapter 1 was the gate and the padlock. Chapter 2 was the law and the folder of proof. Each battle drew lines deeper into the sand, and I was prepared to hold my ground forever. The cease and desist landed like a stone in still water. For 2 days, there was nothing, no calls, no letters, no noise. The silence itself became a warning, too sharp to ignore. I knew they weren't finished. They were regrouping in shadows. The calm before the storm was worse than the storm itself. On the third morning, the mail brought their next strike. A thick envelope, heavier than any before, sat in my box. I carried it inside like a bomb, careful and tense. Inside, 30 pages of accusations and invented violations. Every word dripped with hostility dressed up as policy. They claimed I failed to maintain landscaping properly. They claimed my paint color didn't match community standards. They even accused me of blocking community sales events. It was laughable, absurd, a shotgun spray of nonsense. But it was also deliberate, death by paperwork. I laid the papers across my desk like a crime scene. One by one, I highlighted every lie, every exaggeration. It was a tactic, bury me in noise until I cracked. But I had more patience than they realized I did, and a lawyer who loved nothing more than paperwork. Martinez read the packet with a predator's smile. "They are panicking," she said, flipping pages with ease. "This is harassment disguised as governance." She explained the law. Volume didn't equal truth. Every false claim weakened their credibility in court. Her strategy shifted into something sharper that day. We would not only defend, we would counterattack. She drafted a complaint citing harassment and abuse. She prepared a file for the state's oversight board. For the first time, the hunters were about to be hunted. Meanwhile, the community itself was waking up. Word spread of the attempted sale of my cabin. Some neighbors were shocked, others whispered excuses. But cracks were forming in the board's facade. Not everyone liked rulers who acted like kings. Then came the announcement of the monthly meeting. A notice slid under every door, taped to every gate. The HOA would meet in the clubhouse Friday night. Rumors swirled that my case would be addressed. I knew I had to be there, no matter what came. Friday arrived heavy with tension I couldn't shake. I dressed simple. Jeans, flannel, boots still dusty. Not polished, not rehearsed, just raw truth. When I entered the clubhouse, eyes snapped toward me. Half pity, half curiosity, and half sharp hostility. The board sat at a long table like royalty. The president in the middle, lips tight and smug. To his left and right, his loyal lieutenants waited. Stacks of papers sat ready, a theater of bureaucracy. But I had walked in with my own folder. The meeting began with pleasantries, fake smiles. They spoke of budgets, pool repairs, landscaping costs. But the tension never lifted. Everyone felt it coming. Finally, the president cleared his throat. Eyes on me. We must address a recent matter of noncompliance. He launched into his script, reading from the papers. He painted me as disruptive, uncooperative, reckless. He claimed I had embarrassed the community publicly. He even suggested my cabin was a liability. Every sentence was a dagger dipped in honey. I let him finish without flinching, folder in hand. When he finally sat back, smirk proud, I stood. My voice cut through the room like a clean blade. I am the owner of that cabin. Not you. Not this board. Gasps rippled across the crowd of neighbors. I laid the cease and desist letter on the table. I laid the HOA's own emails beside it, bold and damning. I read aloud the line where they scheduled the tour. I read aloud their threats for refusing strangers entry. The silence in the room thickened with every word. The president tried to cut me off mid-sentence. Out of order, he barked, but his voice cracked. I ignored him, louder, stronger, unbreakable. This board trespassed on private property. This board attempted to sell what wasn't theirs. The room erupted into murmurs, neighbors whispering. Some faces turned pale, others turned red with anger. A few clapped quietly until the president glared. He banged his gavel like it could silence truth. But truth had already taken root in the room. I closed with a promise I'd rehearsed all week. This isn't just neighborly disagreement. It's legal now. My attorney has filed complaints against this board. Every document you've sent me is evidence. And this community deserves to know the truth. When I sat down, my heart pounded like thunder. The president shuffled his papers, rattled, exposed. He muttered about process and clarification. But no one was listening to him anymore. The tide had shifted, and he knew it. After the meeting, neighbors approached in hushed tones. Some offered support, others simply nodded silently. One elderly man gripped my hand and whispered, "They've been doing this for years, bullying everyone." His words fueled my resolve like gasoline on fire. That night, I drove back to the cabin, exhausted. But exhaustion mixed with victory, sweet and sharp. The war wasn't over, but the first battle was mine. The board had been cornered in front of their people. And cornered animals lash out hardest when trapped. The weekend brought no letters, no fines, no noise. But Monday morning delivered a certified envelope. Inside, a summons to arbitration, stamped official. They wanted to drag me into their chosen arena, a place they thought they still had control. Martinez wasn't fazed when I showed her the papers. She explained arbitration was their last shield of power. But she welcomed it, another chance to expose them. We prepared evidence, organized, rehearsed strategy. This time, I wouldn't just offend, I'd dismantle. The date was set 2 weeks away, downtown office. I marked it on my calendar in thick black ink. Every day between became preparation and focus. I drove to the cabin often, checking the lock. Each visit reminded me what I was fighting for. The woods stood tall, ancient witnesses to the war. The creek sang the same song it always had. Nature didn't care about politics or petty boards. But I cared because this ground carried my story, and I would not surrender it to arrogance. As the arbitration date drew closer, nerves stirred. But nerves sharpened me, kept me alert and ready. I imagined their faces when evidence hit the table. I imagined their excuses crumbling under scrutiny. and I imagined the final click of victory's lock. The day of arbitration arrived like a storm breaking. Downtown traffic swirled outside the tall glass building. Inside, my stomach churned, but my hands were steady. Martinez walked beside me, sharp as a drawn blade. We were not walking into their arena, we were claiming it. The conference room smelled of stale coffee and nerves. At the long table, the HOA president sat stone-faced. Beside him, their attorney, a thin man with a smirk. Stacks of papers were spread like weapons of war. They thought they looked prepared. They looked cornered. The arbitrator entered, calm, neutral, professional. He laid out the rules, his tone clipped and measured. Each side would present evidence examined, arguments heard. Simple in theory, but nothing about this was simple. This was years of arrogance colliding with hard truth. The HOA attorney began, voice syrupy with false charm. He painted me as combative, unreasonable, disruptive. He described me as a neighbor who refused to cooperate. His tone suggested I was selfish, hostile to the community. Every word dripped with practiced condescension. But then Martinez rose, quiet, deliberate, precise. She let him finish, let the silence hang like a blade. Then she began with one sentence that cut clean. This case is not about community, it's about trespass. The room shifted as her words sank deep. She laid out the emails, each one projected large. Lines highlighted in yellow screamed their guilt aloud. The board's own word betrayed them without mercy. The arbitrator's pen scratched furiously across his notepad. The HOA attorney's smirk began to falter. Then came the violation notices, absurd and petty, each fine stack high until it looked like farce. Martinez read them aloud, her voice calm but sharp. $500 for locking one's own gate. The arbitrator shook his head almost imperceptibly. The president tried to interject, voice quivering. It was a misunderstanding, he insisted weakly. But the documents disagreed, black ink undeniable. There had been no mistake, only arrogance in action. Every denial crumbled against the paper wall we built. I spoke when Martinez gave me the nod. My voice trembled at first, but steadied with truth. This cabin is my family's legacy, not theirs to sell. I described the sign, the clients, the lock gate. I described the violation of trust burned into me. The arbitrator listened, chin resting on his hand. When I finished, the room felt heavy with silence. No one dared speak, not even the smug attorney. For a moment, the truth simply sat in the air, and everyone knew it belonged to me. The HOA attorney scrambled for footing again. He argued about bylaws, vague rules, and authority. But his words slid off like rain on stone. None of it addressed the central crime they committed. They had crossed the line, and everyone saw it. Finally, the arbitrator spoke, voice calm but firm. This board exceeded its authority, he stated flatly. These fines and actions appear retaliatory in nature. His words were knives, clean and undeniable. The president's face drained of color instantly. A ruling was promised within 10 days' time. But the verdict already felt etched in stone. We gathered our papers, calm and deliberate. Martinez whispered, "We've broken their spine today." I believed her with every fiber of my being. Outside the building, sunlight felt sharper, brighter. The city's noise returned, but I felt lighter. For weeks I had lived under their shadowy threat. Now the weight was gone, replaced with fierce resolve. I wasn't just surviving this fight. I was winning. News of arbitration spread quickly in the community. Neighbors whispered about the board's embarrassing stumble. Some came to me quietly, thanking me for standing up. Others avoided me, still loyal to the board's grip. But change was stirring like wind through dry leaves. The board tried to recover, sending one more letter. This time, it was polite, almost apologetic in tone. They suggested working together to rebuild trust. But it was too little, too late, too transparent. Apologies made under duress are not apologies at all. Martinez advised patience, wait for the ruling first. I wanted to fire back, to slam the door. But strategy mattered more than emotion now. We waited, folder of evidence ready to strike. The law was moving, slow but inevitable. 9 days later, the envelope finally arrived. stamped with the seal of the arbitrator's office. I held it in my hands, heart pounding hard. When I tore it open, the words leapt free, ruling in favor of the homeowner. Every false fine was declared void and unlawful. Every letter was dismissed as harassment and retaliation. The HOA was ordered to cease and desist further. They were even required to reimburse legal fees. The war had ended in a clean, crushing blow. I stood on the porch of my cabin that night. The air was cool, stars scattered across black velvet. The creek song carried a note of triumph to me. I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe years. The cabin was mine again, truly and absolutely. But victory didn't feel like gloating or shouting. It felt like quiet peace, a fire after the storm. I thought of my father's voice, of lessons past. Guard what's yours fiercely, he had said once. And I finally understood how right he was. Neighbors soon knocked on my door one by one. Stories poured out, fines, harassment, petty threats. The board had bullied quietly for far too long. My fight had cracked their armor wide open. Others were ready to rise now, too. The president resigned within a month, cornered. 2 board members followed, citing personal reasons. A new election was called, community-driven and loud. Voices once silenced found the courage to speak. The tyrants had fallen, replaced by accountability. I didn't run for the board, though many asked. My role had been something different, something sharper. I had been the one to light the first fire. Now the community could tend its own flames. I was content to guard my cabin and watch. The padlock still hangs on my gate today, not because I expect another false sale attempt, but because it reminds me of the lesson learned. Freedom requires vigilance. Property requires defense. The click of that lock is my anthem. Chapter foreclosed with victory, but not just mine. It was a victory for anyone tired of bullying, a victory for those who stand their ground, a victory for the truth that ownership is sacred. The cabin stands, and so do I. The cabin is quiet tonight, the kind of quiet that feels alive. Wind threads through the trees, carrying whispers from a creek. A soft glow spills from the windows, warm against the dark. I sit at the old table, journal open, pen in hand. The war with the HOA feels both recent and ancient. I think back to the day it began, so sudden and absurd. A neighbor's text, a phantom sign, a property stolen on paper. Anger had fueled me then, sharper than fear, stronger than doubt. But now, months later, anger has cooled into reflection. What remains is not rage, but clarity of purpose. The fight was never just about a gate or a sign. It was about boundaries, both physical and moral. It was about saying no when pushed too far. In a world full of rules and regulations, choice matters. And choice means drawing lines that cannot be crossed. The cabin itself has become more than wood and stone. It is a symbol of resistance, a fortress of memory. Every board, every nail, carries a weight of defiance. It is where I learned the cost of silence. It is where I chose never to be silent again. Neighbors still come by sometimes, curious and grateful. They talk about their own battles, long hidden in shadows. Stories of fines or trivialities, threats disguised as rules. The HOA had reigned unchecked until someone pushed back. Now, they know the monster bleeds when struck. Some ask how I found the courage to fight. I always laugh softly, because courage is a myth. I wasn't fearless. I was terrified at every step. Courage is an absence of fear. It's movement despite it. I moved because losing meant losing everything sacred. Others ask if I regret the toll it took. The sleepless nights, the endless paperwork, the constant tension, even the cost of lawyers, though the ruling reimbursed me. Regret? No. I answer with unwavering certainty. The cost of submission would have been far greater. The cabin looks different to me now in subtle ways. The porch boards creak, but they sound like music. The lock on the gate shines like a medal. The signpost out front stands bare, but proud. Absence itself feels like a kind of presence. Martina still calls now and then to check in. She reminds me to keep records, stay vigilant, be cautious. But our conversations drift into laughter more often now. She calls me her favorite troublemaker client. I call her the reason I sleep peacefully at night. The community has changed, slowly but visibly. Board meetings are open, transparent, and often heated. People who once sat silent now raise their voices. The culture of fear has cracked, light spilling through. We discovered democracy hidden under years of dust. I walk the trails behind my cabin sometimes at dusk. The air tastes fresher, sharper, like hard-won freedom. Every step feels heavier with meaning, lighter with relief. I know my fight left scars, but scars tell stories. Stories are what carry us forward into tomorrow. I wonder often about power and what it does. The HOA board was not evil, just corrupted by control. Authority unchecked becomes arrogance, and arrogance breeds cruelty. It starts with small abuses, then grows like ivy. By the time it strangles, the roots are too deep. But power resisted changes its shape and strength. It bends when people rise together, refusing to yield. My case was one-man stand, but never just mine. It lit a fuse others had long kept hidden. Together, we made the fire spread and burn clean. The victory itself was not a moment, but a process. The ruling was one part, the resignations another. But the true victory was quieter, more subtle, lasting. It was seeing fear fade from my neighbors' eyes. It was knowing they now walk taller down our streets. When I close my eyes, I see two images. The first is that cursed for sale sign, arrogant, false. The second is my padlock, silver against black iron. One symbolized theft, the other protection, defiance, truth. Both remain etched into the story like twin bookends. Sometimes I ask myself, what if I hadn't fought? What if I had stayed home, stayed quiet, complied? The realtor would have toured, the cabin sullied, maybe sold. My neighbors would have whispered, but nothing would change. Silence would have spread like rot through the community. But I did fight, and the outcome is written. The cabin stands untouched, the gate's still mine. The board has crumbled, rebuilt with fresh voices. The bylaws have been reviewed, rewritten, rebalanced. The story has already become local legend whispered around fires. The moral, if there is one, is stubbornly simple. Protect what is yours, even when it feels impossible. Read the rules, question authority, never assume fairness. Communities thrive on trust, but trust must be owned. Without accountability, even neighbors become predators. Tonight I sip coffee by the window, unhurried. Outside, the stars scatter across the ink-black canvas. The creek hums, patient and eternal, ignoring human drama. My dog lies at my feet, breathing slow and steady. This, I remind myself, is what it was all for. The fight is over, but the vigilance is not. The cabin is safe, but safety is never passive. It demands watchfulness, readiness, a refusal to surrender. I am not paranoid, but I am prepared. Preparedness is simply love armed with responsibility. I smile when I think of the HOA president. His arrogance, his certainty, his collapse under truth's weight. I wonder if he ever lies awake replaying it. I wonder if shame ever pierces his armor now. But perhaps shame is too heavy for men like him. For me, the future looks wide open, peaceful. I will fish in the creek, chop wood for winter. I will watch the trees change with every season. I will open the cabin door to friends, not intruders. I will live here without fear of forced trespass again. The story may end here, but its lesson continues. It echoes through the community, through neighbors' whispers and laughs. It echoes through me, through every step I take. It will echo through anyone who dares resist injustice. Because resistance, once born, never truly dies. I raise my coffee mug like a toast to the dark. To the cabin, the creek, the neighbors, the victory. To the battles fought and the scars earned honestly. To the stubbornness that refused to bow or break. To the padlock that still hangs strong on my gate. Chapter 5 is not really an ending, but a beginning. A beginning for me, for the cabin, for the community. A beginning for anyone who reads this and nods. Because the story of resistance is never just personal. It belongs to everyone brave enough to fight back.